Hey, 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 Melissa, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you, Terry?
I am so excited. And, this subject that we are about to embark on excites me so much because I feel that your description of the person that really wants this kind of control in their life. They want to have this kind of control. And I know that I'm the sort of person that loves to be in control. I want to be in control of my time. I want to be in control of my body. I want to be in control of my life. And I want to have the confidence and energy every single day to show up and be present and know that I can thrive in that equilibrium. So I can't wait to just get inside and find out all of these gold nuggets. So tell me, first of all, you became a social worker.
I
And
did.
obviously, you were supporting people, in crisis. And, as a person with such an incredible background, what kind of drew you to going into this kind of psychology in the first place?
I always kind of felt even as a kid, I remember being the friend that always wanted to help people. And so I think there was that sense of always I really wanted people to see and get to the best version of themselves at the end of the day, right? That excited me to see my friends succeed and reach new achievements. And I think that started the kind of draw to social work. And then it was really wanting people to recognize that they have power to bring themselves in different situations, and being able to be the advocate for them and help them to find those resources was really what drew me.
Because it's a big responsibility, and there's always that passion that sort of comes from an inner desire. That's what I feel, and especially because the name of the show is, the Genius Zone. So I love, discovering how people had a situation that happened to them in their own life that really brought about some magic. And it's interesting because you say that you pivoted from being a social worker that was burnt out and then going into the online space. Can you tell me, because it's very, very, typical for people who are in that kind of work, high league people, people that have got very high expectations of themselves. What were you going through when you were burnt out? How did you know?
Yeah, so the ironic thing is I didn't recognize it actually. It was more the people around me that started to recognize it. What they would notice is I was working long hours, so I never knew my schedule. I wasn't able to necessarily commit to things outside of work because sometimes I never knew when I would be out of work, and I was tired of feeling as though I was letting people down by missing plans, so I would just not make plans. And it was people in my life that started to recognize, hey, you aren't seemingly as around us as much. Or also for me, it was a lack of energy. I was just so tired all the time. And
Mm.
I wasn't able to focus on the present moment. And I think there are a lot of people who are going to find themselves in this situation when we give all day, whether it be to our clients, our family, or for me, it was my job. If we don't give back to ourselves, we're just draining our bodies and mind, and we're not refueling them. And that's exactly where I was.
Incredible. And, what I'm hearing too, because obviously your passion is really about bringing people's habits and the simplicity of changing your life through some, incredible resources that simply mean getting up in the morning, getting out of bed, and doing the right things. So, can you talk me through some of those things that you began doing? Because obviously you became an avid reader, and of course you read the book Atomic Habits. And what do you think? Can you tell our listeners about the book Atomic Habits? Because I really feel that's going to give a really good overview of what people can expect to really get out of this show today. So can you talk about what that book is really based on?
Sure. So that book is really based on building habits, and it was a book that I had been recommended at the beginning of my journey. So I had just kind of pivoted at this point to working in the online space and building out my coaching business. And at that point, I was still looking, I was searching for things to kind of help myself as well to really pivot and heal from my burnout journey. And so I had come across this book, and what stood out to me the most is how simple it really helped me to think of things, right? So one of the ideas that I'm sure people have heard of, or if you haven't, is called habit stacking. So it's this idea that you're already doing habits throughout your day, right? Or things to take care of yourself, like even brushing your teeth, right? It's a habit and a self-care practice we don't even necessarily think of, we just do. And so
Mm.
this book gave you the example of, if you want to add a new habit, really working with your brain. So your brain is already doing certain habits, so why not just tack on another one right after, so it feels very seamless, right? So it's, I want to add, a good example would be flossing after you brush your teeth, right? It's okay, so let's leave that and do that right after. It's a habit that then we just transition to, and before we know it, it's part of our routine.
That's very clever, isn't it? I mean, I know that they talk about, becoming quite ritualistic, like getting out of bed in the morning and making your bed. They reckon that there's something ironic about a person who decides to make their bed, because they say that psychologically it's like one achievement that you've accomplished. And apparently it has an incredible impact on the rest of our day. So, why do you think habits are so important for people, especially the people that I know you love dealing with, like these high achievers, people that want the energy, they want the confidence, they want to have it all, and they want to be able to have that harmony and just that centeredness in their life. Tell me, why is it so important for them to have habits?
So for me, it was the aha moment of the science behind the habits. What are these things doing to fuel our bodies, right? They're giving us endorphins, they're giving us energy, they're helping our brains to concentrate. And it's, for me, it's understanding that things such as a movement break, right, in the middle of your day, are actually going to bring your brain back online. It's going to give your brain that rest that it needs to come back and really fire through the rest of your day. And so for me, understanding and spending time learning about my body and how really these habits are just fuel for me. And so then it was a different perspective. It was not so much, okay, I'm checking off this thing because I know it's good for me, right? Because I think sometimes that's how we feel. It feels like another thing on our checklist. But for me, it's, oh my gosh, I'm fried right now, right? It's lunchtime. I need this break, or I need to go for the walk, because then it's going to refuel my brain. It's going to give me the endorphins, boost my energy, boost my concentration. So I'm going to just succeed with the rest of the day.
And would you suggest that habits are something that are implemented like throughout the day? Or would you say that, what would you suggest? Like when you went from obviously burnt out,
Mhm.
from being a social worker. I mean, you were taking care even, prior because of all your accreditations and what you'd done, but you became an advocate for people, and you were supporting doctors and nurses, and, so you were in a very, like, that responsibility, that dedication is incredible. So at that point, when you moved into social work and then you literally burnt out, what was the first set of habits that you began implementing, and when were you actually doing them?
So for me, the first set of habits that I started adding were movement. I started to recognize that when I started my day with movement, for me, very much at the beginning, it impacted the rest of my day. I had much more energy. I was feeling like an improved mood. And so for me, that's the biggest habit I started with. And I also found I had tried doing movement or exercise at night. And for me, it didn't help me. It kind of kept me up. So it had the
Mm.
opposite effect. So I think it's very important for people to give themselves some time to try things out, because for me, I now know movement is the key way to start my day.
Oh, absolutely. So, from the moment you open your eyes, obviously bathroom and all that sort of stuff, talk me through what kind of habits you've implemented.
Mhm. So for me, on the mornings I have where I'm not at my job, I will start my day often with a walk, even if it's just down the block, right? It just gets that my body going. I also try to not be on my phone during it, so it's really a time where I'm focused on the present, because I just know that we do not take enough time throughout our day to focus on the present and have our brains be able to just take a rest and just notice things around us. It's incredible how much that helps us, because then we're able to build a practice of slowing our brains down and being more in control of those thoughts. So that's really, for me, the key to starting my day.
I mean, that's incredible, because I know even with when I was learning as a hypnotherapist about people's body and actually getting them to trim down and get rid of the excess kilos, one of the first things we had to really learn is that the human mind is quite rebellious, and it doesn't stick to certain things. So it's, like when you're talking about diets and fads, and going to the gym every day, a lot of the time the wheels fall off. So we kind of had to be very, I guess, subliminal almost, and the person almost had to really embrace and embody the way they wanted to do life. So when you talk about body movement, I'm thinking about the kind of movement that I even suggest, which is doable for anyone, anytime, at any stage of your life, whether you're young, whether you are old, even man, woman, even pregnant. So, what kind of body movements? Like, are you talking about, like, if someone's sitting at their desk and perhaps they're online, because I know that I spend a lot of time at my desk. So obviously, do you set an alarm, and then what is it? You just standing up and you just kind of moving your body a little bit, or what kind of suggestions do you give around that?
Sure. So for me, I have found that I don't personally set an alarm. I know some people will set an alarm for, say, every hour or something. I have found that I'm a person that sometimes my brain is in a flow with work, and
Mm.
sometimes it's almost better for me to not interrupt that. So I have found that really doing body scans and starting to notice the messages, your body is going to tell you when it needs a break, right? If you're sitting there and you're saying, like, I think of, my brain is fried. I can't focus. Like, how many times have we said that, right? That's a key that your body probably needs a little bit of movement and a little bit of change of scenery, right? To come back and then refocus. I wouldn't necessarily say for some people every hour, because if you're in that stage of flow, sometimes you don't want to disrupt it, right? So
Yeah.
I
That's
think
true.
yeah, so for me, it's been a journey of really recognizing, okay, my body is giving me some messages right now. I'm going to take a break. So some breaks for me might look like I have different apps too that sometimes I use to help me. But quick meditations have been really good for me. Also going, I like, as I said, I live in kind of a neighborhood. So a quick walk around the neighborhood doesn't take me long, but it gets me outside, gets me moving. Some stretches, they have some pretty simple, even if you don't feel as though you want to get up, some desk stretches that you can do. And the other
Mm,
thing is body scans. Body scans are really powerful because if you're noticing you're not focusing or you feel a little distracted, really what I do is close my eyes. You kind of go from your head to your toes. You scan like each part of your body. You're probably going to notice some tension somewhere. And it's really
mm.
just kind of shaking that tension out, whether it be in your shoulders. For a lot of people, it's kind of squeezing your shoulders and then releasing. And doing that a few times, really, your brain is kind of noticing that spot. You're really able to loosen those muscles that you might not even realize you're hunched over. And then after that, you'll notice you're kind of feeling a little, you're sitting taller almost in your chair, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite incredible how we are as humans, and what I'm really hearing here is self-awareness, and that self-awareness, even to the point where it's interesting that when you first were talking about how you fell into that trap of burnout, other people noticed it before you did. And I wonder if I can kind of relate to that, because I really, sort of go back to my very, very earlier days when I was very driven and I was out of control. Actually, I was out of control. And it was almost like because I wanted to get my life in control, or I may have felt like my life wasn't in control, that I went out of control. So we're very ironic humans. And, the fact was that when I did go down, I didn't see it coming. But what I'm hearing is that you didn't either. And when I listened to your story and how your friends kind of noticed and you started sort of pulling away from them and you weren't socializing, then sort of like fast forward, into the zone of genius of where you've been able to take all your skill sets as a social worker, all your accreditations of what you've done in therapy, crisis care, and you've been able to simplify everything through, engaging in simple habits. But it just amazes me, actually, Melissa, on how simple this is, but how the awareness factor seems to play such a vital part. So tell me, what has been like one of the biggest breakthroughs that you've witnessed with a person who obviously is in a bad place and they've implemented some of these, really easy and simple lifestyle habits and made a complete change? Can you talk me through that?
Yeah, so I think for me, again, it's just as what you had said. It's when you realize that things can be simple and sustainable, it's almost that aha moment, right? It's, "Oh my goodness, I knew that this was good for me," say, journaling, right? But I didn't realize what it was doing for me. And I think it's the aha moment of wow, like this is so much power that I was just overlooking almost, right? I wasn't thinking about what it is doing and how if I journal out my thoughts, okay, now all of a sudden I have this big picture of thoughts. I can look at them and I find sometimes the answer in your journaling, right? Which is incredible because 5 minutes ago you were feeling stuck and you didn't know where to go, but then you knew of this tool, so you used it and then you wrote out all your thoughts and then all of a sudden you're seeing, "Oh my goodness, my thoughts are telling me the answer," right? Versus
Mm.
being stuck in that moment for the rest of your day, right? Because we've all I feel like a lot of us have been there. We've been stuck, not knowing what to do, feeling overwhelmed, feeling out of control, not knowing
Mm.
where to turn, and then realizing, oh my goodness, these simple things that I know you've probably heard 100 times in your life actually have this incredible power for you. And that transformation, seeing someone go through that or yourself go through it, it's so empowering because all of a
Mm.
sudden you realize you can create some of this control and you can have a solution when you're feeling overwhelmed, right? Whereas maybe before you started building these habits or looking into them, you felt out of control and didn't know what to do.
My gosh, absolutely. And it just makes me think of those times in my life which I, didn't realize what was going on for me. And if I could have just had those simple elements of being able to know these things like journaling and how being able to write down on paper some of those thoughts means that it's getting it out of your head onto the paper, and therefore it's helping you process. And when you're sort of getting in touch with your body and you're, not only are you sort of like becoming aware of, oh, where am I holding this tension, but even I love what you said about how you even then tighten the tension so that you're physically taking control of it almost, and then releasing it and letting it go. And there's just so much like magic in this. But the other thing that really gets me and grabs me about the whole genius zone and what I see in people like yourself is that the weakness of a person's greatest trial that they've had in their life, like where you've talked about moments where you have literally felt out of control, like in high school when you were going through that transition. And then there was this element of even in your childhood where you felt that out of control feeling as well. And then interestingly, you also noticed that you would get frustrated because you were saying to me that you felt a little bit like, well, why is this happening anyway? Because there was no rhyme or reason. But then we discovered that sometimes when it doesn't come from us, where does it come from, Melissa?
The past.
Exactly. And not just the past, we're talking how far back?
7 generations, I think you told me.
7 generations. Well, look, it can even go beyond that. But isn't it interesting that you even discovered like there was a sense, it was almost like you had a sense that there's some concept of something that's out of control, and that there's nothing that you could pinpoint in your own life, but there was a concept that it had happened in the generation before you.
Mm.
And this is the interesting part. So obviously when people are like, you've obviously, this is something you've grappled with, but this is the interesting part for me, because what you've grappled with, you've then become the master of. And this is what I love, because you kind of take that. So for that person who is really wanting equilibrium, that person that's really wanting harmony, obviously their biggest grit, or what I call their biggest grr, is going to be what absolutely goes against their value system. So, tell me, what do you think was so bad about feeling out of control? What did it mean for you?
I think for me, when I would kind of feel out of control, the trigger really was I didn't know how to fix it. And so it just snowballed, right? It was this idea of I'm feeling overwhelmed and feeling overwhelmed. Oh no, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Oh no, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Like it just got bigger versus now it's okay, yeah, I'm feeling overwhelmed, but I have a toolbox of things that I know and I can tell myself yeah, your brain's trying to tell you something or your body is trying to tell you something. And we know
Yes.
that sometimes well, all the time, right? Our brain wants to protect us. So these feelings of overwhelmed come up because our brain senses danger, whether or not there's danger around us. For me, what was frustrating is most of the time there wasn't any danger that I could pinpoint, but my brain still was trying to protect me. Now
Mm.
I have these tools to recognize that and to kind of almost have a conversation with my brain, right? Of, okay, you're feeling overwhelmed. I understand that. And then I can look at the situation. Is there any danger? Yes or no. And then I can pull from my toolbox and say, okay, let's go take a walk or let's connect with a friend and just take a break here, right? I can give us that peace to calm myself back down and then move on to the rest of the day. It doesn't stay with me throughout the day. I don't snowball into, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. I have a toolbox. I know this is a message. What's the message?
Absolutely. And this is the science behind the self care that you're so passionate about. So, what does science actually say about self care?
There's so much research. It's incredible if you start even just a basic Google search, like what you find of how self-care is really the way I think of it, it's the fuel for your body. It's what's keeping you going throughout the day, your muscles, your organs, all of the different parts of your body, and then it's helping you in things like productivity, efficiency, time management, all of these different things. And it's even helping prevent certain things. There's so much research on it preventing certain diseases or helping you to be at lower risk for certain things. And so it's actually incredible. It was mind-blowing as I was going through it, and it is so empowering because you realize you have some control in these things and you can give your body what it needs in that moment.
That's so good. I think we need to hear it. People like myself, and I know a lot of our listeners, a lot of coaches, healers, leaders, and just people that are really passionate. And, I have to say, it's sad, but it's true that the more driven that we are, it usually stems from a kind of fundamental void that we had in our life. And that's always the good news. And I feel that when people start to develop that concept of, instead of being in this spiral of going out of control, feeling overwhelmed, going into exhaustion and burnt out, when they can just pull back, because I think everything you are saying, and this is the thing, and this is what I think you have got that is just not out there enough at the moment for people like us. And that is that it's the simplicity. This is not rocket science. This is about, if you are suffering and you're going through some really exhaustion, burnout kind of symptoms, it's absolutely shocking how it plays havoc on every key area of your life. But the good news is, when you can stand back and you can say, hang on a minute, this is happening for me. What do I need to do? And then engage in some of these skills. Like, you've got a 10-week program. And I love what you said to me about the 10-week program, because you know very well that, it's really keeping people accountable to, going through the change of their patterns and their habits, because this is the thing that's missing. The missing link is that people need this, whether it is that they've fallen into bad habits, bad addictions, they're in self-sabotage, perhaps they're just overworked, whatever it is, to be able to have something like this where you can really join forces with someone like Melisa, who happens to have these highly accredited skill sets of social work, therapy, and then to come into the online space and to be able to offer, even though I know it's not your word, it comes from the book Atomic Habits, but really implementing these habits. Can you talk me through your program and what that's going to look like, and what that person that's probably burnt out, tired, and needs to have this simple and yet profound revelation in their life? What can they expect at the end of their program? What is it going to mean for them?
Sure. So it's a 10-week program where we build space to build habits, right? And there's accountability is a big part of it, because I am a firm believer that having that accountability and support really propels these habits to be developed faster. I also think that the people that could benefit this program, including how I was a year, 2 years ago, are giving all day long, and with they need the accountability, right? They're not putting themselves on the top of their priority list, but this accountability is going to help that. And so, really, at the end of the program, the goal is that you are going to have practiced these habits. You're going to feel comfortable using them. You're going to start to recognize what messages is your body giving you, and what tools can I pull from to be able to give my body what it needs in the moment, making you feel this sense of the program is called Equilibrium Architect Academy, because we are building equilibrium inside of ourselves, right? We're creating this skill set where we really do feel this sense of internal centeredness that carries from our work to our personal life till we go to bed and when we wake up in the day, right? And so that's the goal of the program, is that you build this toolbox, you understand the science behind it, and you fuel your body. So you're showing up your most productive, efficient, balanced self.
Mm, I love that. And this is it. You're really an advocate for, I mean, you've been an advocate for doctors and nurses to really help resource them. So to be able to offer something like this to, people like myself, and people that are out there working hard who really want to be able to feel that equilibrium and bring it home with them, like be at work with that energy, be at home with it. And I guess that's just gonna really release so many things. The thing that's really popping up for me right now is, I know especially in the online space, so many people are doing, and I think they're trying so hard on trying to be in this process and this strategy, that they're really losing the magic of their inner flow. And so, coming into this kind of a program, I'd really like to be able to be a bit cheeky here, Melissa, and maybe pinch a few little gold nuggets from you by asking, can you give us perhaps 3 exercises that you're prepared to share with our listeners on the show, just to sort of help us get through the day? What would be the 3 gold nuggets you would suggest?
I think the first thing that has been a game changer for me is when you start to feel overwhelmed, just recognize it. Just take 30 seconds, acknowledge it in a neutral standpoint, right? Say, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. When you say that even 5 times, notice how your body is like, oh yeah, I'm overwhelmed. That's okay. It almost just starts to break that down a little bit. And that is super helpful. The other thing that I say is a golden nugget that's helped me: find community, right? Whether it be on social media, whether it be in your own personal life, I think finding a community of people who can support you and who you can talk to about these things is so important, because they're the ones that are going to build you up, right? And then I
Mm.
think the last thing, a simple thing that's really been beneficial is movement. It really is. If you're feeling stuck, move your body. Just whether that be a stretch, walking, yoga, If you wanna do a high intensity workout, there are so many different ways that you can add movement that doesn't have to take long, and that's the other key, right? If we start to recognize these are simple, sustainable habits that don't take long, we're more likely to implement them because our fear is, "I don't wanna take 2 hours out of my day to take care of myself. I don't have 2 hours." It doesn't have to be 2 hours. It has to be
Mm.
sometimes 5 minutes, and you're gonna reset your brain, and you're gonna come back in such a clearer space.
Wow, I love that. So RCM, guys, if you can remember that. So when you are in this situation where you know you want to be that highly confident, highly energized, and yet have the harmony and the centeredness and the presence to be on the top of your game, remember the RCM rule. Recognize, become very, very, astute with recognizing, oh, like Melissa said, I'm overwhelmed. It's like what even the Bible says. You bring the truth out into the light, and guess what? You set it free. So it's almost like you're setting yourself free by recognizing it. Number two, community. That's C, right? Because when you're with like minded people, and definitely when you're coming into this kind of a container with Melissa, you are going to be with like minded people because these are the people that are not looking for rocket science or anything too woo woo or anything over the top, but they want to be able to have something simple, easy, and fun that they can apply into their day. And I know a lot of people like that, especially when you're looking at, even CEOs, people that are, when they're not CEOing, they're kind of socialiting, they want to be able to just do something that's very quick. So these strategies recognize community and then movement, like just kind of getting up and moving your body. It's not like you're having to get up and run a marathon every day or go to the gym every single day. You're committing to something that if you're able bodied and you're able to move, you can do. So I absolutely love this. And your program is starting, I believe it's coming up. And I guess there's no point in giving a timeline here because obviously it's probably going to be well and truly launched. So 10 weeks of the science of this incredible, learning these atomic habits and really being able to get on top of your life. If you had any last words that you would like to share here, Melissa, what would they be?
I think reminding people to give yourself grace too. Habits don't happen overnight, and I didn't build these overnight. And I think understanding that is also very powerful because don't give up too soon, right? Understand that this is a change over time. You're changing the pathways in your brain. How awesome is that? But just a reminder, keep going, right? It's going to take a little bit of time, but the change is just going to be so beneficial for you.
That's amazing. That's just incredible. I've just loved the simplicity of being able to know. I think that's a big sigh of relief that, there's people out there that may be feeling so at the end of their tether, so overwhelmed. And they may think that, oh my gosh, this is going to take, 6 months for me to get in and see my counselor or psychologist. And they can simply start applying these simple skill sets and coming into that community and just being able to realize that you may be fighting a battle that's been going on for 7 generations or more, as you've heard from Melissa's story, right? And so by really being able to take hold of it, what Melissa's done is she's been able to really turn this into her zone of genius. She's been able to bring it together with all of the conscious competency of of what she's done in her past, and even as a teenager, because you mentioned you'd always loved being there for people, and that was obviously in your DNA. And so I just want to thank you so much for just this incredible, this gold nuggets that you've been able to give our audience, and even elements that they can start applying straight away.
Thank you, Terry. It's really been a pleasure to work with you and be able to be on this podcast and share, because I know, as you said, there are people who are just looking for these answers, and we don't have to overcomplicate it.
Boom. Love it. Okay. I'll see you soon, gorgeous.
Thank you.
Okay. Fantastic.